Jayodaya, and thank you for joining us today. Again, today we have with us an art of living expert and an officer of the Vedic Dharma Sansthan. Today we are going to discuss about sage Kapila and his influence in our tradition. So let's begin. So to begin, could you explain the significance of sage Kapila in the Vedic tradition? The other sage Kapila is revered as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu and the founder of a theistic Sankhya philosophy, which forms the intellectual backbone of much of Indian spiritual thought. His birth to Kardama Rishi and Devahuti is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. Unlike many sages who attained wisdom through austerity, Kapila was born fully enlightened, which itself is a divine statement. The true knowledge is timeless. His teachings to his mother Devahuti, known as Kapilopdesha, are a complete manual for spiritual evolution. He combines metaphysics, devotion, yoga, and psychology in a seamless way. Kapila explains the 24 tattvas, the nature of the soul, bondage, karma, and liberation. But the heart of his message is bhakti, or deep devotion to the divine, as the fastest path to freedom. In Vedic Sansthan, Kapila is honored during Sankhya Parayanas, Bhagavad Saptas, and special homas dedicated to wisdom deities. In the art of living, we see Kapila's teachings reflected in the emphasis on self awareness, meditation, clarity of mind, and transcendence of suffering through spiritual practices like Sudarshan Kriya, meditation, and knowledge sessions. Kapila is not just a philosopher but a living guide for inner transformation. Now, how does Kapila's birth story inspire spiritual seekers today? The Kapila's birth story is profoundly symbolic. The Karda Maharishi, a master yogi, seeks divine intervention so that his lineage can carry spiritual light forward. Lord Vishnu promises to incarnate as Kapila, and Devahuti welcomes him with total surrender. This story reveals that spiritual evolution begins with humility, service, and purity of intention. For seekers today, especially in the art of living, Kapila's birth signifies that divine wisdom can manifest when the environment of the mind is sattvic. Devahuti served Kardama with patience and dedication. Similarly, spiritual seekers must cultivate seva, discipline, and receptivity. Kapila's births in a hermitage away from noise and distraction reminds us of the role of a supportive spiritual ecosystem. Art of Living programs create such ecosystems, silence programs, Gurukul environment, long kriyas, and satsangs help the mind settle. So, wisdom can arise naturally in Vedic sense, and Kapila's birth is honored as a celebration of divine knowledge descending into human life. Kapila shows us that when the divine wants to uplift humanity, it chooses a human form, a family, and a mother disciple relationship, teaching that wisdom is both intimate and universal. Now, Devahuti's role is often underestimated. How do you describe her spiritual greatness? Devahuti is not merely Kapilas's mother, she is a symbol of Shraddha or faith and Seva or selfless service and Sharanagati or surrender. She is the daughter of Swayam Bhuva, Manu, brought up in a king's palace, yet she willingly lived a simple hermitage life to support her husband's spiritual pursuits. Her greatness lies in her humility. Although she is the mother of the Lord Himself, she approaches Kapila not as a mother but as a disciple. This reversal of roles is extraordinary. It shows that in spirituality there is no ego. She openly admits her confusion, exhaustion, and suffering, displaying courage to seek liberation in Vedic Damsons. And Devahuti is honored as an archetype of the ideal disciple. During Parayanas, the chanting emphasizes her sincerity. In Art of Living, her qualities mirror those encouraged in courses, openness during knowledge sessions, humility during processes, and sincerity in sadhana. Trust in the master, just as Devahuti transforms completely through Kapilas's guidance. Art of Living practitioners experience inner transformation through Gurudev's wisdom and practices. Devahuti shows that any seeker, regardless of background, can attain liberation when the heart is pure. Now, what exactly is Kapilopdesha and why is it so central in the Bhagavad tradition? The Kapilopdesha refers to the systematic spiritual teachings Kapila gives to Devahuti. It spans Bhagavatam Canto 3, chapters 25 to 33. This Upadesha covers the entire journey of the soul from bondage to liberation. It's central because Kapila brings together four pillars: the bhakti or the devotion as the easiest path, the Sankhya as deep understanding of creation, yoga as meditation, and discipline. The Atma Jnana is the direct realization of the self. What makes Kapilopdesha unique is that Kapila doesn't reject the world. He shows how to transcend suffering while living in the world. In Art of Living, Kapilopdesha resonates with Gurudev's teachings. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You are not the body, you are consciousness. Bhakti is the sweetest path. Meditation dissolves impressions during Sudarshan Kriya. People experience a very separation. Kapila speaks of witnessing the mind as separate from the self. In Vedic Dhamma Kapilopdesha is chanted during wisdom homas, Bhagavad Parayana, and Sankhya homas because it purifies the the antakarna or the inner instrument and brings clarity. Now, how does Kapila describe the nature of the soul and why is it that teaching important today? The Kapila states that the soul of the Atman is eternal, pure, untouched, luminous, and blissful. It is not the body, not the mind, and not the ego. Suffering arises when the soul identifies with Prakriti, especially the ego. Today. Mental health issues, identity struggles, and stress arise from this same misidentification. Modern people have and believe I am my job, I am my emotions, I am my failures. Kapila dismantles this illusion in Art of Living. When people meditate or do Kriya, they experience a glimpse of this truth. They realize they are the witness, not the turbulence. This aligns exactly with Kapilas' teaching of Sakshi Bhav, the witness state in Vedic themselves and rituals, especially the Atma Shuddhi Hova. The mantras remind the seekers of this inner purity. Understanding Kapilas' teachings is essential because it restores peace. Depression reduces when one realizes I am not the suffering. Anxiety reduces when one learns I am the unchanging self. Kapila offers a timeless psychological and spiritual therapy. Now, Kapila speaks deeply about bondage. How does he explain it? The Kapila teaches that bondage arises from ignorance, the forgetting of one's true nature. The soul gets entangled in the body mind complex through ahankara or false ego, the vasana or impressions, the karma or the action reaction cycle, the raga dvesha or the likes and dislikes. This bondage leads to repeated sorrow, confusion, and rebirth. In Art of Living courses, this explanation matches exactly with how Gurudev explains the source of human suffering, accumulated stress, impressions, habits, and emotional patterns. So darshan, kriya, and meditation break this cycle by cleansing vasanas, just as Kapila says that spiritual practice burns the karmic seeds. In Vedic Sanskans, homas like the Chandi Homa and the Navgraha Homa symbolically burn karmic obstacles and free the seeker from unseen bondage. Kapila emphasizes that bondage is not external, it is internal. No person, place, or situation binds us, it is our own mind. This teaching is extremely liberating. Once we understand that freedom is internal, the path becomes clear, purity and purify the mind, and the soul naturally arises to freedom. Now, one of Kapila's core teachings is bhakti. Why does he emphasize devotion over intellect? Jayadeva Kapila calls bhakti the highest and most effortless path, while Sankhya is analytical. Kapila's ultimate conclusion is devotional. He says that the heart opens faster than the intellect. Devotion melts the ego, cleanses the mind, and connects one directly to the divine. Intellectual knowledge often increases pride, debate, and doubt, but devotion transforms the very core of one's being. Inviting themselves on all pujas, from Rudrabhishekams to the Gita Parayana, are soaked in devotion. The chanting itself creates a bridge with the divine. In Art of Living, bhakti is expressed through satsang, chanting Om Namah Shivaya, the meditations, and the Guru Puja. Gurudev always says the head has questions, the heart has answers. This is exactly what Kapilas's message is. Bhakti is not sentimentalism, it's the most powerful psychological purification. Kapila assures that even a little devotion destroys lifetimes of karma. That is why he calls bhakti the royal highway to liberation. Now, Kapila also teaches meditation. How do his instructions align with art of living techniques? The Kapila describes a meditation as sitting in a clean place, steady posture, calm breath, and withdrawn senses, and awareness absorbed in the divine. This aligns perfectly with art of living practices. When we teach the Sahat Samadhi meditation, that essence is effortlessness, natural settling of the mind, transcending thought, Kapila emphasizes the same effortless approach, meditation as resting in one's true nature. So Darshan Kriya prepares the mind for this depth, it detoxifies the system, making meditation easy. Precisely how Kapila says purification leads to stillness. In Vedic Dhamma the meditation Kapila speaks of is embedded in rituals. While chanting mantras, the mind naturally becomes one pointed. During homas, the rhythmic sound create a meditative space. Thus, Kapila's instructions for meditation are alive today in both organizations, one through practice, the one through ritual and scripture. Together, they keep this yogic legacy vibrant. Now, Kapila's explanation of Prakriti and Purusha is profound. How is it relevant in modern life? Jagdev Kapila explains Prakriti as material nature, body, mind, senses, and Purusha as a witnessing consciousness. Most modern day stress arises because people confuse the two. When Prakriti fluctuates, the moods, the hormones, the circumstances, people mistakenly think I am changing. Kapila corrects this. You are Purusha, all changes belong to Prakriti, not you. This understanding is transformational. In Art of Living, many participants report after Kriya, I feel separate from my thoughts. My anger no longer defines me. This is exactly what Sankhya realization is. In Vedic Dhamma, the distinction is manifested through ritual symbolism. For example, during Agni Homa, the fire represents the Purusha, the pure, the luminous, while the offerings represent the impurities of Prakriti being surrendered. Thus, Kapila's ancient teaching becomes a modern therapy, which is distinguished between what is transient and what is eternal. Now, Devahuti finally attains liberation. What does her transformation represent for seekers? Now, the Devahuti's transformation is one of the most inspiring journeys in spiritual literature. She begins overwhelmed by household duties, exhaustion, and inner turmoil, but through openness and sincerity, she becomes a liberated sage. Her story shows that liberation is not limited to monks or renunciates. Even a householder, a mother, someone facing emotional struggles can attain the highest state. In Art of Living, thousands of people experience this transition stress to freedom through courses, Kriya, meditation, and Gurudev's knowledge. Devahuti's transformation shows no one is too ordinary for enlightenment, no suffering is too deep to be healed, no obstacle is permanent. In Vedic Dhammas, and Devahuti is honored as a symbol of Shuddha Bhava or pure intention during Parayanas. Her story reminds devotees that liberation is the birthright of every soul. Her life teaches that when the seeker is sincere and the master is divine, the journey is guaranteed to reach its destination. Now, Kapila speaks of the three modes of nature. How does this idea help people understand their emotions today? The Kapila's presentation of the three gunas of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas is one of the earliest psychological models in human history. He explains that our moods, decisions, desires, and even relationships are shaped by the proportion of these gunas. Sattva brings peace, clarity, compassion. Rajas brings restlessness, ambition, and agitation. Tamas brings lethargy, confusion, inertia. Understanding this helps modern individuals see that emotional states are not personal failures but energetic fluctuations. A person can observe their inner condition and realign themselves through lifestyle, food, and spiritual practices. In Art of Living, this is exactly why we emphasize sattvic food, pranayama, kriya, and satsang. They increase the sattva. Gurudev often says, don't fight your emotions, uplift your prana. This echoes Kapilas's wisdom. In Vedic Sansan, rituals such as Satya Narayana Vrata, Sudarshan Homa, and Navagraha Shanti are specifically designed to increase sattva and reduce tamas. Kapilas's teaching makes one emotionally intelligent. Instead of saying, I am depressed, a seeker learns to say, Tamas is strong right now. Let me bring in more sattva. This shift reduces guilt, increases mastery, and supports mental well being. So, how does the Kapila define suffering and how does his definition match with the modern stress? The Kapila defines suffering as a friction caused when consciousness identifies with the fluctuating mind. He explains that the mind is constantly moving, driven by desire, fear, and memory. When the soul mistakenly believes this turbulence is me, suffering begins. Modern stress is identical to this. People identify with their job performance, social image, relationship dynamics, financial ups and downs. The mind fluctuates, so suffering fluctuates. Kapila offers a timeless solution: disidentify, become the Sakshi, the witness. Art of Living students often experience this shift. After Sudarshan Kriya, they say, I feel lighter, thoughts don't grip me anymore. This is Kapila's teaching manifested through breath. Gurudev's knowledge, you are like the sky, thoughts are like clouds, mirrors Kapila's analogy that the soul is untouched by mental turbulence. In Vedic Dhamma, suffering is addressed by chanting mantras that purify the inner field. The vibrations reduce the identification and create space between the mind and the self. Kapila teaches that suffering is not external, it is the mind's misalignment with its source. Once aligned, even pain cannot become suffering. Jagadish, so Kapila explains karma in a very scientific way. So can you elaborate? Yes, Jagadev. Kapila presents karma not as superstition but as a precise law of cause and effect. Similar to physics, every action, physical, emotional, or mental, creates an impression or a samskara that seeks expression. The cycle continues birth after birth unless interrupted by spiritual practice. He divides karma into prarabdha or already bearing fruit, the sanchita or the accumulated, agami or the future karma created by present actions. He explains that the soul gets born because these impressions color the mind. In Vedic Dhamsansan, homas like the Mahamrityunjay Homa, Ganapati Homa, and Chandi Homa help burn sanchita karma symbolically and energetically. The Parayanas of Bhagavad and Gita dissolve karma through surrender, and Art of Living Kriya functions as an internal homa. The rhythmic breathing burns impressions stored in the pranic body. Meditation stops the creation of new karma by dissolving reaction patterns. Kapila says that karma is not punishment, it is a learning mechanism. When understood, it becomes a tool for evolution. As clarity on karma makes spiritual life scientific, not blind faith. Now, Kapila speaks about attachment. How does he suggest overcoming it? Now, the Kapila teaches that attachment arises when the mind projects permanent happiness onto impermanent objects. The moment you believe this person or thing will give me lasting joy, attachment begins. This leads to fear, anxiety, and bondage. To overcome attachment, Kapila suggests viveka or discernment between transient and eternal. The vairagya is the natural dispassion born of understanding. The bhakti is the offering everything to the divine. The satsanga is the company of evolved beings, and out of living attachment naturally reduces through meditation and kriya. As inner fullness grows, outer cravings weaken. People report feeling centered and content, making attachment unnecessary. Gurudev explains attachment as clinging with the fear of loss. When trust in the divine grows, the clinging drops. In Vedic Dhammasasthan, rituals like the Vishnu Sahasranama Parayana, Durga Saptasiddhi, and the Rudra Abhishekam help dissolve attachment. Recitation creates a feeling of surrender, reminding the mind that everything is divine play. Kapilas's approach doesn't demand suppression. He shows how awareness transforms attachment into love and dependence into devotion. Now, how does Kapila differentiate between love and attachment? The Kapila beautifully defines love as a natural expression of the soul, while attachment is clinging of the ego. Love liberates, while attachment binds. Love flows from fullness, while attachment arises from lack. He explains that love is expansive, it includes others without expectations. Attachment is narrow and self centered and filled with anxiety. In modern relationships, this distinction is vital. Many people confuse emotional dependence with affection. Kapila helps them see the difference in art of living. Gurudev often says love is your very nature. This resonates with Kapilas's teaching through meditation and Kriya. People experience self love and inner completeness, making love effortless and attachment unnecessary. Now, in the Vedic Dhamma practices, the recitation of the Narayana Kavacham, the Lalita Sahasranama, or Hanuman Chalisa opens the heart. Devotion becomes love without attachment. Kapila tells Devahuti that true love is Ananda, a reflection of the self. When you recognize yourself in all beings, attachment dissolves and a higher, purer love arises, a love that uplifts instead of entangling. This distinction is one of Kapila's greatest contributions to human emotional intelligence. Now, Kapila describes the body as a temporary dwelling. How should seekers understand this? Jagadev, Kapilas's description of the body as a temporary vehicle is not to create aversion, but to remove wrong identification. He explains that the body is made of the five elements, constantly changing, aging, and dissolving, yet the soul remains unchanged. This teaching helps seekers put problems in perspective. Health issues, appearance, aging, and even success or failure become less heavy when one understands this body is an instrument, not my identity. In art of living practices like yoga, kriya, and meditation help people experience the distinction between body and self directly after kriya. It is common for participants to say they feel spacious or beyond the body. In Vedic Dhamsansan, homas reflect this truth symbolically. The offering of the body dissolves in spirit or fire, but the sacred fire of the soul remains. Kapilas' teaching is empowering. When a seeker understands that the body is temporary but sacred, they take care of it without attachment. They use it for seva, sadhana, and growth. It brings freedom from fear, especially fear of aging and death. It inspires gratitude for life, not anxiety. Now, Jagadev Kapila talks about the mind's restlessness. How does one cultivate a stable mind? Jagadev Kapila identifies the mind as the main cause of both bondage and liberation. Its restlessness comes from unfulfilled desires, past impressions, and lack of clarity. To stabilize the mind, Kapila suggests meditation, breath regulation, the satsang, and the simple living, devotion, and self discipline. This aligns perfectly with the art of living approach. Sudarshan Kriya regulates breath and prana, bringing the mind to its natural calm. Meditation stabilizes awareness, while seva and satsang uplift emotions. In Vedic Dhamma Sansthan, the rhythmic chanting of mantras acts as a psychoacoustic method to steady the mind. Repetition of divine names creates neuroplastic patterns of peace. A stable mind is not one without thoughts, it's a mind not shaken by thoughts. Kapila teaches Devahuti that such a mind becomes a clear lake, reflecting truth. This stability is the foundation of spiritual evolution and modern well being. It helps people work efficiently, handle relationships better, and live joyfully. Now, Kapila emphasizes satsang. Why is good company so crucial for spiritual progress? Now, the Kapila compares satsang to a powerful wind that carries a small boat across the ocean of life. He says that even a moment with evolved beings purifies the mind. Satsang is crucial because humans learn by vibration, not only by words. The presence of spiritual people uplifts one's energy field. In Art of Living, satsang is central. Singing, chanting, and listening to wisdom drops from Gurudev creates a community of support and inspiration. People often say that one evening of satsang lifts mood more than weeks of personal struggle. In Vedic Dhamsansan, satsang happens through parayanas, homas, yagyas, and gatherings of scholars and devotees. The atmosphere becomes charged with spiritual energy. Kapila warns the Devahuti that the opposite of bad company can pull the mind into tamas and rajas. Therefore, choosing the right environment is essential. The satsang accelerates the spiritual evolution. It dissolves doubts, reinforces discipline, and creates a living connection to the divine. This ancient teaching is even more relevant today when distractions are high and supportive spiritual communities are rare. Now, Kapila speaks about mantra. How does the mantra chanting help the mind and the soul? Now, the Kapila describes mantra as sound energy that aligns the inner consciousness with the cosmic intelligence. Mantra cleanses the subtle channels or nadis and purifies the mind. In Vedic Sansthan, mantra is the backbone of all homas and rituals. Chanting creates resonance in the environment and in the seeker. Mantras like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, the Narayana Upanishad, and Durga Saptasati are often recited to invoke divine grace. Mantras works on three levels: the sound, the soothing the nervous system, the vibration or the clearing of emotional blocks. The meaning is elevating consciousness. In Art of Living, mantra is a core part of Sahat Samadhi meditation. The personal mantra takes the mind from gross to subtle states. Even simple chanting during satsang releases stress and brings joy. Kapila teaches that mantra chanting not only purifies but also protects. It creates a shield around the mind, preventing negativity from entering. Mantra is not mere repetition, it is a technology of the spirit, a direct link to the divine. Now, Kapila's teachings emphasize the inner purity. How does one cultivate it in daily life? The Kapila explains that the inner purity or the antarshuddhi arises when thoughts, emotions, and actions align with truth, compassion, and awareness. It is cultivated through consistent sadhana and lifestyle choices. Daily practices that increase purity include regular meditation, mindful eating, honest communication, sattvic diet, the pranayama, and gratitude. Avoidance of harmful media or company. In Art of Living, the combination of kriya, meditation, seva, and knowledge cleanses the inner field. Each element removes different layers of impurity like stress, negativity, confusion, and ego. In Vedic Dhammasana, purity is cultivated through ritual discipline, clean spaces, sacred chanting, purifying homas, and adherence to dharmic conduct. Homas like the Pavanam Homa and the Sudarshan Homa are specifically aimed at internal purification. Kapila teaches Devahuti that purity is not rigidity, it is freedom from clutter. A pure mind is naturally peaceful and joyful. Inner purity is the soil in which devotion, wisdom, and meditation flourish. It transforms ordinary life into sacred living. Jagadav, so how does a Kapilopdesha interpret the nature of desire and how do art of living courses help one understand it? The Kapila tells Devahuti that karma begins when the mind forgets its own fullness. Desire itself is not a problem. Attachment to desired outcomes is what creates suffering. He explains that when consciousness gets entangled with Prakriti, it starts seeking joy outside, forgetting that joy is its own nature. This entire psychology aligns beautifully with what Gurudev often says in The Art of Living. Desire is like a river, learn to swim, don't get drowned. In Sudarshan Kriya and meditation programs, participants experience rather than intellectually understand the difference between natural desire and compulsive craving. After deep rhythmic breathing, the mind becomes content, unnecessary desires drop effortlessly. So, Kapilopdesha gives the philosophical map, and Art of Living provides a practical experience to live it daily. Now, in the Vedic Dhammasana, during Kapila's Smrti Parayana and Sankhya based satsang sessions, we chant verses on desire or purification, the Vasana Shaya. We also perform the Chitta Shuddhi Homas, where the intention is to burn accumulated impressions. Kapila speaks of Vairagya with clarity, not repression but understanding. The rituals purify the environment while the teachings purify the mind. Now, Kapila speaks of bondage being mental. How is this teaching practiced in Art of Living in Vedic Dhamma? There, the Kapila makes a profound declaration: the bandha chittasya swabhava. Bondage is just a pattern in the mind. It's not physical, not social, but a mental knot. The moment the mind becomes expanded, bondage dissolved in Art of Living. We observe the same in sky breath meditation. People who felt stuck due to anxiety or past trauma suddenly felt as if a heavy weight has lifted. This happens because the breath cuts through mental conditioning, and meditation creates a space where the mind sees itself clearly. When the observer consciousness awakens, bondage becomes just a concept, no longer an experience. The Sansthan reinforces this truth through traditional methods like Paramparika Dhyana and the Rudra Abhisheka and the Kapila Mantra Japa. When devotees chant Om Kapilaya Nama, it invokes the principle that inner freedom is not earned, it is remembered. Bondage is a forgetting, liberation is remembrance. Our homas and parayanas aim to help devotees recall this natural freedom. Now, Kapila explains how the mind is influenced by gunas. How do modern seekers relate to this? The Kapila's explanation of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas is one of the most practical psychological maps ever given. He describes how these gunas color perception, choices, habits, and emotions. Modern seekers often feel overwhelmed with stress, overthinking, or lethargy, all guna fluctuations. Through Sudarshan Kriya, participants directly feel like tamas lifting, rajas channelizing, and sattva rising. Meditation stabilizes the sattva, so the mind becomes clear and stable. This is not philosophy, it is daily lived experience. In the Sansthan, guna balance is addressed through sattvic rituals, especially the Sattvika Homas chanting of Srimad Bhagavatam Kapila Khanda, and dietary guidance is based on Ayurvedic wisdom. The Devahutis' journey from confusion to clarity represents the movement from tamas to sattva. Our rituals create an environment that naturally elevates consciousness, making Kapila's teachings practical for today's devotees. Now, Kapila teaches that meditation is the direct path to liberation. How does this resonate with the Gurudev's teachings? Then the Kapila tells Devahuti that meditation or the Dhyana Yoga is the most direct and accessible method for liberation. He describes meditation not as effort but as resting in the self, allowing Prakriti's modifications to settle. His Holiness Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji emphasizes the same truth. Meditation is the art of doing nothing. In Art of Living advanced meditation programs and Sahat Samadhi meditation, seekers experience precisely what Kapila described: the mind quiets, identity expands, and the self shines effortlessly. This ancient principle becomes a living technique under Guru's guidance. In Vedic Dhamma our lineage preserves the several dhyana mantras from the Kapila tradition. During Kapila Jayanti and Dharana Dhyana workshops, we train devotees in mantra based meditation. Kapila's instructions, observe, do not interfere, are reflected in our traditional practices of silent japa, mana sadhana, and antarmana. Thus, both streams bring the ancient teaching to modern seekers and authenticity. Now, what does Kapila say about ego and how is ego addressed in art of living practices? The Kapila's message is clear. Ego is simply the misidentification of the infinite self with a temporary body mind instrument. He tells Devahuti that ego or ahankara keeps a person trapped by claiming, I am the doer. In art of living, the ego dissolves not by force but by deep experiences of expansiveness. When someone experiences the depth of meditation or the joy of seva, the ego naturally becomes soft. Gurudev reminds us, ego dissolves in devotion, laughter, and silence. Kapilopdesha's philosophical clarity merges with experiential wisdom in every program. In the Sansthan, we approach ego through surrender or Atmanivedana. Offerings made during Homa like ghee, grains, herbs symbolize the offering of egoic patterns. Reciting Kapila's verses on the nature of the self reminds devotees that ego is just a ripple on the vast ocean of consciousness. The ritual and the realization complement each other. Now, Kapila emphasizes Viveka or discernment. How is this cultivated today? The Kapila teaches that discernment is the torch that guides the seeker through the maze of Prakriti. Without clarity, even spirituality can become mechanical. In Art of Living, discernment develops when people gain mental calmness through breath work and meditation. When emotions settle, clarity arises automatically. Gurudev also gives knowledge points, simple yet profound, that sharpen the Viveka. Sky helps the mind drop confusion. Knowledge helps the intellect stay sharp. Together, the seeker becomes wise. In Vedic Dharma Sansthan, we cultivate Viveka through spiritual and scriptural study or Shastra Adhyan and Satsangs on Sankhya. When devotees study the Kapilopdesha, they learn how to differentiate the eternal from the ephemeral. Rituals and reinforce this understanding by reminding devotees that everything offered is temporary while the experiencer is eternal. Now, what is the role of bhakti in Kapila teachings and in art of living? Many people think Kapila's Sankhya is only analytical, but in the Bhagavatam, Kapila elevates bhakti to supreme importance. He tells Devahuti that devotion purifies the heart faster than analysis. Gurudev often emphasizes the same love is the highest meditation. In Art of Living, bhakti is expressed through satsang, chanting, service, and deep gratitude practices through devotion. The mind effortlessly returns to its source. Kapila's philosophy finds its emotional completion in devotion. Now, a traditional Kapila as both a philosopher and a divine incarnation. His teachings integrate beautifully with the bhakti rituals of the Sansthan like Kapila Gayatri, Kapila Sahasranama, and Devi Sakti Homas. Bhakti opens the heart, the Jnana illuminates the mind, while Kapila harmonizes both. Now, how does Kapila describe the nature of suffering? Jagadav Kapila explains that suffering arises from adhyasa, or the superimposition, mistaking the non self for the self. When the mind clings to transient things, pain becomes inevitable. This mirrors what we observe in meditation programs. Suffering intensifies with wrong identification. When awareness expands, pain loses its grip. The sky removes emotional toxins stored for years, and meditation allows people to see suffering as a passing cloud. Kapila's psychology becomes a lived reality. Now, in the Sansthan, we use the chanting of Kapila's verses on detachment to help devotees understand suffering as a distortion or perception. Rituals like a Dukkha Haranam Homa symbolically burn the karmic residues. Understanding and ritual together transform the experience of suffering. Now, Kapila speaks of the body as a vehicle. How do you interpret this? Jagadav Kapila tells Devahuti not to over identify with the body. It's a sacred instrument, a boat to cross the ocean of existence, but it is not the self. In Art of Living, we maintain the same perspective. The body must be cared for through yoga, diet, kriya, but ultimately recognized as temporary. Yoga and breathwork keep the body harmonious so it can support higher states of consciousness. Now, the Sansan reinforces this through rituals like the Ayusha Homa and Dhanvantri Homa. They strengthen the body while reminding devotees that health is the foundation of the ultimate goal. Kapila's teaching integrates beautifully with both Ayurveda and spirituality. Now, how does Kapila describe liberation and how is this experience in modern spiritual practice? The Kapila describes liberation or moksha as abiding in one's true nature, pure awareness untouched by Prakriti. It is not escape but clarity. In meditation, people often describe a glimpse of this, a vast stillness and unshakable peace. Gurudev's guidance helps the seeker stabilize these glimpses. Liberation becomes a journey from confusion to clarity, not a distant goal. In Vedic Dhamma Sansthan, liberation is celebrated through moksha dayaka homas, a chanting of Upanishadic verses, and study of Sankhya. Kapila's detailed map of liberation allows devotees to understand that moksha is not death but full awakening. Rituals and knowledge together guide the seeker to this realization. Thus, Kapila emphasizes inner purification. How does this teaching reflect in Art of Living's daily practices? The Kapila tells Devahuti that without Antarshuddhi, even disciplined actions remain incomplete. He describes the heart as a mirror covered with dust. Inner purification cleanses the dust and reflects the self clearly. In Art of Living, daily practices like Sudarshan Kriya, Pranayama, and meditation serve exactly this purpose. People often report how, after a few days of practice, long held emotional burdens simply dissolve. Gurudev teaches that breath is the quickest purifier. Every exhalation releases impressions of samskaras, stress, and old patterns. This aligns completely with Kapilas's insistence that purification is not moral policing but energetic cleansing. When the mind becomes light, clarity and joy naturally shine through. Now, in the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan, purification is approached through multiple layers: the mantra Shuddhi, the Bhava Shuddhi, and Vastu Shuddhi. Kapila's teachings are recited in Kapila Smriti Parayanas that emphasize purity of intention. Rituals like the Navagraha Shanti, Chitta Shuddhi Homa, and Durba Lankarana Dakha Karma ceremonially cleanse the subtle impressions. We also encourage devotees to practice simple contemplations inspired by Kapila, like observing breath and chanting Om Kapilaya Namaha or reflecting on impermanence. Kapila's vision of purification is not ascetic, it is deeply compassionate. It recognizes that human beings live in the world but must keep the inner sanctuary clean. Both paths, like Art of Living's experiential practices and VDS's ritual based methods, complement Kapila's timeless guidance. Now, in Kapilopdesha, Devahuti's humility plays a major role. What does her attitude teach modern seekers? Devahuti approaches her divine son not as a mother but as a seeker with intense yearning and humility. Her humility is not weakness, it is clarity that one doesn't know. Today, people often suffer because they think they should already have all the answers. Devahuti teaches that surrendering the idea of I know everything is the first step to spiritual growth and art of living. This attitude is encouraged in programs where participants drop their mental burdens and simply follow the process. Gurudev often says the student inside you should always remain alive. Devahuti embodies that principle. Her humility opens her heart to receive the highest knowledge, just as openness allows sky and meditation to work deeply on modern seekers. In the Vedic Dhamma Devahuti is seen as a symbol of Sharanagati, the total surrender born from recognition, not helplessness. During Parayanas, we emphasize her devotion, patience, and willingness to let divine wisdom replace egoic understanding. Many of our rituals celebrate the Guru Shishya relationship that she represents. Kapila honors her humility by offering nothing less than liberation. Her example teaches devotees that when the student is ready, divine wisdom inevitably flows. Now, Kapila explains that worldly activities can continue even after spiritual awakening. How is this applied in today's world? Kapila tells the Devahuti that liberation does not require abandonment of life, it requires abandonment of false identification. He assures her that she can continue performing her duties as long as she remains established in awareness. In Art of Living, this is a core principle. Meditation does not make you withdraw from the world, it makes you dynamic yet centered. Corporate leaders, homemakers, students, and entrepreneurs all learn to perform action joyfully without burning out. Gurudev calls this state the relaxed dynamism where work becomes effortless and relationships become harmonious because inner conflict is absent. Kapila's vision of participating in life with a free mind becomes a practical lifestyle in Art of Living. Now, in Vedic Dhamma this teaching is reflected in rituals that bless householders, the Grahastha Ashrama Homas, prosperity rituals, and ancestral offerings. We uphold Kapila's insight that spirituality is not an escape, but a deepening of one's role in life. Devahuti herself continued her worldly duties until her last breath, yet remained liberated. This spiritual and inspires devotees to integrate spiritual wisdom with responsibilities rather than seeing them as opposites. Now, how does Kapila describe the relationship between mind and consciousness? Yeah, the Kapila draws a clear distinction between the mind, the manas, and the consciousness or the purusha. He says the mind is like a stream, changing, reactive, influenced by gunas, while consciousness is the unwavering witness. In art of living programs, participants often experience this distinction very tangibly. During deep meditation or sky, they observe thoughts come and go, yet a silent awareness remains untouched. Gurudev repeatedly points out that recognizing this witness is the essence of meditation. Kapila's Sankhya creates a conceptual map. Art of Living provides a direct experiential doorway. When seekers understand that thoughts don't define them, stress loses its power. In the Vedic Dhamma Kapila's teachings on Purusha are read during the Sankhya Parayanas. Rituals are designed to still the mind so the underlying consciousness can be felt. During Purusha Sukta Homas, we chant mantras that honor consciousness as universal, ever present, and untarnished. Kapila's clarity helps devotees maintain a healthy relationship with the mind. Use it, don't become it. Now, Kapila speaks of birth and death as natural changes. How does this knowledge help reduce fear? Now, the Kapila explains that birth and death are simply transformations of Prakriti. The self remains untouched. When seekers deeply understand this, we are dissolved in art of meditation programs. Participants often report that their fear of losing control, losing people, or losing identity decreases dramatically. When consciousness expands, the grip of death related anxiety weakens. Gurudev's teachings emphasize that life is a continuum and the soul is eternal. Sky and meditation give glimpses of this continuity, moments beyond time, beyond identity, which Kapila describes in philosophical terms. Now, in Vedic Dhamma, some rituals like the Mrityunjaya Homa and the Ayusha Parayana are performed specifically to dissolve fear and promote inner strength. Kapila's verses on impermanence remind devotees that clinging to the body or possessions causes suffering. His teaching, combined with these sacred rituals, helps the devotees accept life's transitions with grace. Now, what do Kapila's teachings say about compassion and its role in spiritual life? Though Kapila is often seen as a philosopher, his teachings radiate deep compassion. He repeatedly assures Devahuti that liberation is natural and accessible. Compassion in Kapila's view arises from recognizing that all beings are bound by ignorance until awareness dawns. And out of living, compassion is central through seva projects, trauma relief programs, rural development, and euthanasia to seekers naturally express expanded consciousness in action. Gurudev often says that meditation deepens compassion because it brings you into alignment with your true nature. In the Vedic Dhammasana, Kapila's compassion is celebrated during Matrika Pujanas and Devahuti Smarana rituals. His dialogue with his mother itself is an act of compassion. He encourages devotees to practice kindness, charity, and service as part of their sadhana. Rituals often include the sankalpas for the well being of all beings, the Sarva Bhavantu Sukhina. Kapila's wisdom inspires both inner and outer compassion. Now, how does Kapila explain karma and how do art of living techniques help dissolve the karmic impressions? The Kapila defines karma not merely as physical action but as a mental residue, impressions stored in the subtle body. He tells Devahuti that these impressions shape destiny until awareness dissolves them. In Art of Living, Sky is known for releasing deep rooted emotional and even intergenerational patterns. Meditation softens the karmic conditioning by bringing awareness to unconscious tendencies. Gurudev often says karma is not punishment, it is incomplete experience. Through breath work, devotees complete those experiences and move forward with lightness. The Sansthan addresses karma to rituals like Karma Vimochana Homa, Pitra Tarpan, and Navgraha Shanti. These rituals symbolically and energetically dissolve the karmic blocks. Reciting Kapila's teachings on detachment from results also helps devotees rewire their relationship with the action. Kapila's clarity, combined with ritual purification, supports karmic release. Now, Kapila speaks about the power of memory and impressions. How does this relate to the mental health today? The Kapila describes the smriti or memory as a powerful force shaping identity and reality. When memory is distorted, suffering arises. He tells Devahuti that wrong memory leads to fear, anger, and attachments. This aligns perfectly with modern psychological understanding. In Art of Living programs, many participants experience relief from trauma, anxiety, and emotional heaviness because Sky clears impressions stored in the limbic system. Meditation strengthens the positive memory of peace, joy, and silence. Gurudev often says that the mind becomes healthy when it can let go easily and bounce back quickly. In the Sansthan, Kapilas's message on impressions is reinforced through mantra japa, which purifies thought patterns. Rituals like the Sankalpa Shuddhi help devotees set clear positive intentions. Parayanas on Kapilopdesha remind devotees that memory should serve awareness, not bend it and bind it. Kapilas's ancient psychology has profound relevance for mental health today. Now, how does Kapila describe the ultimate truth of the self? The Kapila describes the self as Nirguna, the Avikriya, Shuddha and Nitya, pure and changing and eternal awareness. He tells Devahuti that recognizing this truth dissolves suffering instantly. In meditation retreats with the Gurudev, people often report moments where this description matches their direct experience, a sense of vastness, timelessness, and unbroken peace. Art of living techniques gently guide seekers to experience, not just intellectually understand. The self as presence beyond thought. Kapilas' philosophy becomes a living reality in silence. In our tradition, Kapilas' descriptions of the self are cherished as highest Vedantic truth. Rituals like Atma Shuddhi Oma and chanting of Upanishadic mantras help devotees internalize this wisdom. During satsangs, we emphasize contemplation on Kapilas' declaration: You are not the body, not the mind, you are the infinite witness. Devotees gradually shift from identification to realization. Now, Kapila emphasizes the importance of a competent guide. How does this relate to modern gurus? The Kapila himself was Devahuti's guru, though he was her son. He shows that the guru disciple relationship transcends the external rules. It is rooted in inner readiness and divine timing. In Art of Living, Gurudev plays this role with compassion and wisdom. He doesn't impose knowledge, he awakens it. Kapila says that a true guru helps the seeker see what is already present in sky and Sahat Samadhi meditation. Seekers often feel that the teacher simply removes internal obstacles to clarify. Clarity can emerge naturally. In Vedic Dhamma, the guru is regarded as a living embodiment of scriptural wisdom. Kapilas' role as an avatar guru sets the model for this tradition. During the Guru Puja, devotees reflect on how a guru brings grace, clarity, and direction. Kapila emphasized that without guidance, the mind wanders. With guidance, it awakens. This truth remains unchanged even today. Now, Kapilopdesham describes bondage and liberation in very clear terms. How does the art of living interpret bondage in the modern context? In Kapilopdesha, bondage is described as a product of identification with Prakriti, our body, emotions, memories, likes, dislikes, the stories we carry. In modern life, bondage shows up as stress, anxiety, comparison, competition, and the constant pressure to live up to an image. In Art of Living courses, we explain that bondage is not outside, it is a pattern inside the mind. When people do Sudarshan Kriya, they experience a separation from those patterns. That moment of silence is an echo of Kapila's teaching. You are the witness consciousness. It's incredible how a 10,000-year-old teaching becomes an experiential truth today. Now, how does a Vedic Samsthan understand the concept of liberation taught by Kapila? Now, the Kapila Muni defines liberation as a cessation of ignorance, the realization that the soul is eternally pure, untouched by Prakriti. In our Vedic Samsthan, liberation is not seen as some distant metaphysical state. It is a practical lived inner freedom. When we do Kapila Muni Homam or the Srimad Bhagavad Parayana, the chanting softens the ego, breaks mental conditioning, and purifies the field of consciousness. Kapila says that knowledge and devotion together bring liberation. Our rituals create devotion, our teachings bring knowledge. The two work like two wings of a bird, leading the seeker to the state where the mind becomes still and the self shines naturally. Now, Kapila emphasizes Sankhya as a path of discrimination. How does the art of living introduce discrimination or Viveka in its programs? Jagadev, Viveka is the ability to distinguish the real from its unreal, the eternal from the temporary. In Art of Living, we cultivate Viveka through guided introspection, knowledge sessions, and meditation. During happiness program or Yes Plus courses, we ask very simple yet profound questions. Is this worth getting angry about? And will this matter after 5 years? Who suffers when you hold on to resentment? These reflections awaken discrimination. Gurudev often is a living example. He always chooses compassion over reaction, clarity over confusion. When participants experience a calm mind after Kriya, their Viveka becomes sharper. They naturally start making decisions that align with peace, not pressure. This is Sankhya in a daily living. Now, how does the Vedic Samsthan uses Sankhya principles in ritualistic context? In Vedic tradition, rituals are not blind actions, they are symbolic expressions of Sankhya disciplines and principles. For instance, the five elements used in a homa, like earth, water, fire, air, and ether, represent the building blocks of Prakriti. When we offer ghee or herbs into the fire, it symbolizes the offering our vasanas and attachments into the transforming fire of knowledge. The priest chanting mantras is the Purusha or pure consciousness. The entire ritual is a Sankhya map in action. The Purusha witnessing Prakriti, Kapila would have appreciated this immensely because it reflects his philosophical framework. In our Sansthan, we teach volunteers that performing a homa is actually performing an inward yajna. Now, Kapila explains the subtle body in great detail. How does art of living connect with subtle body to breath and emotions? Yeah, the subtle body consists of mind, prana, and impressions or samskaras. Kapila describes it as a vehicle through which the soul experiences the world. In Art of Living, the subtle body is central to our pranayama and meditation practices. When breath is shallow, emotions become turbulent. When prana is strong, the mind becomes serene. The Sudarshan Kriya deeply cleanses the subtle body by releasing emotional toxins stored for years. Many participants say they feel light, expanded, or free. These are classical signs of purification of the subtle body, exactly as Kapila mentioned. Even the kosha-based knowledge in art of living mirrors the Kapila's Sankhya map. Now, how does the Vedic dances and rituals impact the subtle body according to Kapila's framework? If the mantras vibrate at frequencies that directly influence the subtle body, when we chant the Kapila Muni's shlokas or the Srimad Bhagavatam, the vibration enters the nadis, the fire ritual purifies the pranic layer, the water offering purifies the emotional layer, the chanting purifies the mental layer. Kapila says the subtle body travels from life to life carrying impressions. Rituals, when done with devotion, burn these impressions so that the soul becomes lighter and closer to liberation. This is why in our sansan, devotees feel immense peace during parayanas. It's the subtle body shedding layers of heaviness. Now, Kapila's teachings emphasize self-effort. How is this taught in art of living programs? The self-effort is central in art of living. Gurudev says, I can give you a path, but you have to walk it. Kapila tells Devahuti that liberation cannot be gifted, it must be earned through practice, introspection, and discipline. Similarly, in art of living, we encourage people to practice Kriya regularly, meditate daily, and stay connected with satsang. Even seva is self-effort because it purifies the ego. Participants quickly understand that no one else can calm their mind for them. They must take responsibility. The spirit of self-effort combined with grace mirrors Kapilas's message perfectly. Now, how does the Vedic Samsthan guide seekers in self-effort alongside ritual support? Rituals and mantras create a conducive environment, but the seeker must develop the inner discipline. The Kapila Muni told Devahuti that knowledge must be practiced, not merely heard. In our sansthan, we encourage devotees to chant daily, do japa, maintain purity of thought, and study scriptures. Rituals are like rain, but self-effort is like a farming. Without tilling the soil of the heart, even divine rains won't bear fruit. Kapila's emphasis on personal responsibility is fully embraced in our tradition. We support the devotee, but we also empower them to walk their own spiritual path consciously. Now, Kapila explains the role of senses in bondage. How does art of living help people manage sensory overload in the digital age? Kapila says that senses are an outward and tie the mind to the external world. Today's world is Kapila's warning amplified. The screens, the notifications, the social media, and the constant stimulation. Art of Living teaches people to disconnect from sensory bombardment and reconnect with the silence. The yoga, the pranayama, and meditation work like a reset button. After Kriya, the senses become refined. People report that colors look sharper, sounds become softer, and thoughts slow down. This is the senses withdrawing from chaos and returning to balance, exactly what Kapila wanted seekers to experience. Now, how does the Vedic themselves and rituals regulate the senses? The rituals offer a controlled sensory inputs, fragrance of incense, warmth of fire and sound of mantra, sight of deity, and the taste of prasadam. Each sense is sanctified rather than suppressed. According to Kapila, purification of senses leads to purification of mind. Our rituals provide a sacred atmosphere, whereas senses become gateways to divine rather than distraction. Devotees often say that just sitting in a homa makes their mind serene. This is not psychological alone, it is Sankhya physiology. The senses become aligned with sattva and the mind naturally moves toward devotion and clarity. Jagadev.